I recently posted the following on Minds.com in response to an article from the Irish Times that weddings with 100 guests highly unlikely to be allowed this summer. So I said, the social distancing restrictions and level of control of personal autonomy and freedoms, as well as the re-engineering of society itself, actually fit very well within the Agenda 21-2030 Sustainable Development Goals strategy. SDG have always been a pathway to global communism. Governments now know that many people in the West are surprisingly easy to control when significant fear is instilled in them over a prolonged period of time. Governments can now determine how far people can travel from their home. They can determine what social activities, jobs and businesses are essential. They can close pubs, restaurants and other public spaces. They can forcibly break up groups over a certain size. They can specify the number of people permitted in your private residence or even the maximum number of guests at your wedding. Will society also simply acquiesce to the invasiveness of contact tracing and tracking apps, as well as mandatory testing? And finally, will they submit to mandatory vaccinations or else suffer social ostracization and marginalization if people have already accepted the precedent of removal of all their other rights and freedoms? On what grounds can they refuse the loss of their bodily sovereignty? I believe we're in the midst of a serious cultural change here. The populace at large now no longer believe their freedoms are inalienable, but instead see them as little more than concessions granted to them by the state. So, welcome to an entirely different world, at least for now, until people wake up. And I want to talk about the World Economic Forum and what they refer to as the Fourth Industrial Revolution, the groundwork of which has been laid through the Agenda 21 and Agenda 2030 projects, and they're now referred to as the UN's Sustainable Development Goals. In this video, I will simply be presenting you a collection of articles and videos showing you a general trend of where the world appears to be going, and I think you'll begin to see some patterns emerge. First things first, this article is from the World Economic Forum from 2016. Welcome to 2030. I own nothing, have no privacy, and life has never been better. Except, of course, for the technocrats who designed such a communist utopia. They're the ones who will no doubt have all the privacy, wealth, and property they want. Freedom and liberty are no longer for the proles, it appears. This article sounds like a parody. Welcome to the year 2030. Welcome to my city, or should I say, our city. I don't own anything. I don't own a car. I don't own a house. Imagine thinking you could actually frame this in a positive way. I don't own any appliances or any clothes. It might seem odd to you, but it makes perfect sense for us in this city. It sounds like a prison. Everything you considered a product has now become a service. We have access to transportation, accommodation, food, and all the things we need in our daily lives. As to how this is paid for, who knows? One by one, all these things became free, so it ended up not making sense for us to own much. First, communication became digitized and free to everyone. Then, when clean energy became free, things started to move quickly. Transportation dropped dramatically in price. It made no sense for us to own cars anymore because we could call a driverless vehicle or a flying car in 2030. Flying cars in 2030. For longer journeys within minutes, we started transporting ourselves in a much more organized and coordinated way when public transport became easier, quicker, and more convenient than the car. Now, I can hardly believe that we accepted congestion and traffic jams, not to mention the air pollution from combustion engines. What were we thinking? Though our world has never been perfect, it at least worked and once actually valued meritocracy. For those who wish to build a perfect world, a utopia, they always inevitably create a dystopia. The road to hell and to communism is always paved with good intentions. Sometimes I use my bike when I go to see some of my friends. I enjoy the exercise and the ride. It kind of gets the soul to come along on the journey. Funny how some things never seem to lose their excitement. Walking, biking, cooking, drawing, and growing plants. It makes perfect sense and reminds us of how our culture emerged out of a close relationship with nature. Environmental problems seem far away. In our city, we don't pay any rent because someone else is using our free space whenever we do not need it. Right, so someone is in your home, which you don't actually have a home, when you're not there. Happy with that level of no privacy? My living room is used for business meetings when I'm not there. It's hard to take this article seriously. It sounds more like a parody written by a naive teenage socialist. If you can't own your own home and private ownership is a thing of the past, then you're at the mercy of state-enforced collectivism. To bring about such a world would require significant top-down control and totalitarianism. Once in a while, I will choose to cook for myself. It is easy. The necessary kitchen equipment is delivered at my door within minutes. Since transport became free, we stopped having all those things stuffed into our home. Why keep a pasta maker and a crepe cooker crammed into our cupboards? We can just order them when we need them. This also made the breakthrough of the circular economy easier. When products are turned into services, no one has an interest in things with a short lifespan. Everything is designed for durability, repairability, and recyclability. The materials are flowing more quickly in our economy and can be transformed to new products pretty easily. Environmental problems seem far away. Since we only use clean energy and clean production methods, the air is clean, the water is clean, and nobody would dare to touch the protected areas of nature because they constitute such value to our well-being. So in other words, you don't have freedom of movement? In the cities, we have plenty of green space and plants and trees all over. But what if you want to go to the rural areas? Apparently you're not allowed to actually go where you want now. I still do not understand why in the past we filled all free spots in the city with concrete. And everything is perfect all day long, everywhere, right? Every day. And no one goes hungry. And we all live in a Star Trek style imaginary wonder planet of infinite resources and rainbows and kittens, right? But it's the last part of that paragraph I want to focus on. One of the plans for the Agenda 21-2030 Sustainable Development Goals project is that the masses will be huddled together in smart cities and people will gradually be forced to move away from rural areas into these cities through a series of carrot and stick policies. Smart cities are essentially hellish, futuristic urban prisons for the destitute masses to live in, surveilled, controlled, and tracked through a big brother artificial intelligence that employs a China-style social credit system, zero freedom, and a cashless society so that all financial transactions are monitored. Internet of Everything will be ubiquitous, and so you'll be connected, or should I say shackled, to this technocracy, whether you like it or not. Those who refuse to conform will be marginalized to the fringes and left to endure a kind of virtual gulag, cut off from the rest of society and unable to access basic services which the oligarchs will control. When these same elites create these propaganda videos with nice-sounding buzzwords like smart solutions, integrity, innovation, sustainability, sustainable growth, environmentalism, clean energy, equality, equity, blah, 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 they're always referring to planetary resources that everyone needs: food, water, nature, healthcare, money, electricity, agriculture, industry. And so their plan becomes obvious for anyone who can read between the lines. Their intention is to control all of these things, to control the means of production and all of life's essentials. Everything a human being needs to live. Once they control all of these things, they can force you into any kind of world that they wish to create and essentially turn you into a serf. So the bit about the air is clean, the water is clean, and nobody would dare to touch the protected areas of nature because they constitute such value to our well-being. In the cities, we have plenty of green space and plants and trees all over. This is important because what they're telling you here is that people will not be able to travel where they want to rural areas, down the country kind of thing. You'll have to live in a smart city. So there'll be great restrictions on your movement. You won't be permitted to venture out to the natural environment. Your self-driving car simply will not permit you to go there. You'll be able to commute between cities and urban areas, but not into the countryside. That privilege will be reserved for the uber-rich technocrats who will enjoy luxury mega homes in beautiful, unspoiled, and idyllic remote locations surrounded by nature. They'll have it all for themselves. Now, the environmentalists who support this kind of stuff, they argue that depopulation of rural areas is an important part of restoring biodiversity and preserving the environment. Basically, most people will live in these kind of AI-controlled metropolitan super-city menageries like cattle. Already we can see the manifestations of Agenda 21 in terms of how countries are changing property planning and zoning. This article is from stovuno.org. Agenda 21 and how it plays out. New Zealand is in the process of introducing a raft of measures to implement Agenda 21 by undermining traditional private property rights. These include legislation to enable the control or requisition of private land for the purposes of rewilding or for urban development. Here is some background to Agenda 21 and a look at the American experience, particularly with regard to the way the concept of biodiversity is used to negate property rights. Major goals of Agenda 21 include the abolition of private property, the demise of rural living, exclusion of humans from wild areas, the abolition of single-family homes, government control of food supply, mandatory birth population control. Like all similar UN documents, Agenda 21 is full of positive values that nobody seriously disagrees with in principle, such as care of the environment and adequate housing for all. Like similar documents, Agenda 21 assumes the anthropogenic global warming narrative as a non-negotiable premise, assumes biodiversity as having a value that supersedes human rights, asks for greater roles for the UN and the corporate-owned NGOs. The two planks of environmentalism, climate and biodiversity are used to justify interference in the lives of people that can only be described as totalitarian. Likewise, the current pandemic crisis we're going through is being used to force new social controls on people and take away their individual, inalienable liberties and freedoms, all introduced by the same kinds of organizations, the United Nations, for example. COVID-19 is essentially an accelerant for the Agenda 21-2030 plans. The Agenda 21 encapsulates and refines the policies of the UN bureaucracy as developed and flagged over several decades, such as those relating to private land ownership. According to the United Nations Conference on Human Settlements 1976 Habitat 1 official report, land, because of its unique nature and the crucial role it plays in human settlements, cannot be treated as an ordinary asset controlled by individuals and subject to the pressures and inefficiencies of the market. Private land ownership is also a principal instrument of accumulation and concentration of wealth and therefore contributes to social injustice. If unchecked, it may become a major obstacle in the planning and implementation of development schemes. Under the Vancouver Declaration, the section of the official report of Habitat 1 that was available for formal signature, states commit themselves to the following position. Land is one of the fundamental elements in human settlements. Every state has the right to take the necessary steps to maintain under public control the use, possession, disposal, and reservation of land. Every state has the right to plan and regulate use of land, which is one of its most important resources, in such a way that the growth of population centres, both urban and rural, are based on a comprehensive land use plan. In Agenda 21, this becomes 15.5i, develop policies to encourage the conservation of biodiversity and the sustainable use of biological and genetic resources on private lands. It is clear from the way Agenda 21 is being implemented that encourage means compulsion through legislation, taxation, and local authority zoning. So this is why it can be harder for people to get mortgages in certain rural areas of their country. For example, they're doing this here in Ireland as well. The United Nations view of private property is that the state has the right and should be exercising this right to take land for environmental reasons in order to fulfill an environmental agenda. This is in conflict with the culture of countries like New Zealand, which assumes that universal private home ownership is the best way to achieve equal opportunity, security and happiness for all, and thus private property rights should only be interfered with for the purpose of essential public works such as motorways. Agenda 21 was theoretically succeeded by the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, but both Agenda 2030 and especially 21 have largely been abandoned by the United Nations and its proponents because of the negative connotations and replaced with terms like sustainability and resilience. Thus, while the EU produced a progress report in 1997 termed Agenda 21 for the first 5 years, it now refers to sustainable development in the European Union. The US experienced Agenda 21 and the Wildlands Project. The Wildlands Project proposes that 50% of American territory be wilderness reserves, largely no-go for humans, bloody hell, surrounded by buffer areas and joined by wilderness corridors with human beings largely confined to urban areas, smart cities, Publicity of the scope of the project led to the US Senate failing to ratify the UN Convention on Biological Diversity. Meanwhile, back in town, it is not just farmers and rural dwellings that are affected by Agenda 21 policies. The UN strategy for high-density urbanization and reduced property rights is playing out in towns and cities as well. In 2005, the Supreme Court, Kalo versus New London decision, allowed a Connecticut town to seize private property, not just for public use, but also for private development, thus paving the way for councils to do deals with developers at the expense of the property rights of homeowners. The Urban Development Bill, currently before the New Zealand Parliament, is similarly designed to legalise the forced acquisition of private property for commercial development. California lawmakers are taking steps to eliminate single-family zoning by enabling all residential lots of properties in California to be legally converted into multiplexes. It is inevitable that standalone dwellings in the state of California will ultimately be a thing of the past. Basically, a pod life, it sounds like. The planning department of Carroll County, Maryland, drafted a smart growth plan. They put smart before everything. You know it's a bad idea when they do that. Which proposed what has been termed a breathtaking reshuffling of land rights, and which clearly serves the UN agenda of using biodiversity to eliminate single-family homes with gardens. The plan includes downzoning of agriculture land to prevent future subdivision by farmers, upzoning of low-density residential land around small towns into higher-density zoning to permit construction of hundreds, possibly thousands of inclusive housing units, including apartments and condominiums. And there's been plenty of this going on in Ireland over the past few decades. The building of horrific eyesore apartments and houses with no gardens or front driveways, just shared car parking spaces, endless urban sprawl, basically rabbit hutch towers that look oppressive, to be honest, more like cell blocks than homes. And of course, as I've said, it's much harder to get mortgages in certain rural areas of the country. Anyway, back to this absurd World Economic Forum article. The death of shopping. Shopping. I can't really remember what that is. For most of us, it has been turned into choosing things to use. Sometimes I find this fun, and sometimes I just want the algorithm to do it for me. It knows my taste better than I do by now. Sounds like some people want a machine to do all their thinking for them and to just live as mindless drones. Notice that God and belief in transcendence never factors into any of these utopian ideas, mainly because God liberates humanity from the tyranny of man. That's why communists hate religion so much, especially Christianity, because it places God as the ultimate authority above man. My biggest concern is all the people who do not live in our city, those we lost on the way, those who didn't want to live like trapped and tagged cattle, those who decided that it became too much, all this technology, those who felt obsolete and useless when robots and AI took over big parts of our jobs, those who got upset with the political system and turned against it. They live different kind of lives outside of the city. Some have formed little self-supplying communities. Others just stay in the empty and abandoned houses in small 19th century villages. Actually sounds not too bad by comparison. Once in a while, I get annoyed about the fact that I have no real privacy. Once in a while. Nowhere I can go and not be registered. I know that somewhere everything I do, think, and dream of is recorded. I just hope that nobody will use it against me. All in all, it is a good life. Yeah, because this is an imaginary scenario. In practice, though, it would be as hellish as China is right now. Speaking of China, have you seen this Wall Street Journal video from 2017? It sounds like the blueprint of where they want us to go in the West. In this Chinese city, Xinjiang, there's heavy policing everywhere, like a war zone. Constant government surveillance of the populace, facial recognition, constant police checkpoints. You know, it's basically hell. Everyone is on the system. Everyone is tracked all the time. Every move you make is monitored in this city. And you're checked multiple times a day.
To be in Xinjiang means being checked every day, multiple times a day. When you go to a market, when you drive a car, when you take a train, even your smartphone is checked.
But what I found most striking was what this wine store owner said. He says, "It is really cumbersome. Nobody wants to do anything anymore. The police check my ID so many times, I don't want to do shopping anymore." And that's very interesting because this is how more and more people in the West are starting to feel under social distancing rules. Now, obviously, China is a good deal further down the road, but not much worse at this point. The social distancing, temperature checks, obsessive hand sanitizing, queuing all the time to get into buildings, app tracking, that's all happening more and more in public venues in Western cities. And it makes the prospect of going outside very undesirable indeed. As I've said before, it makes the populace associate being around other people in public settings as a pain, an unpleasant experience, and therefore something that they prefer to avoid. This encourages people to stay at home, do their shopping online, speak to people over the internet rather than in person, and become more isolated, cut off, and alone. I don't think anyone can deny that the entire world is now beginning to look and feel much more like China as each day passes. I found this video on Twitter. So basically these guys are spray painting arrows on the ground, just like in grocery stores, that tell you which way you're allowed to walk up and down the road, right? So you can't walk back the way you came kind of thing.
Oh my God. So people, now what happens if I don't walk, and what if I do this? And I will, because this is what I'm gonna do. What happens if I do this? What do they do to me? This is I know you guys are doing your job, but this is insanity. This is tyranny. That's what this is. This is communism. Come on, this is communism.
She's absolutely right. This is micromanagement of every aspect of human behavior. They're going after how you walk down the street at this stage.
No, it isn't. I have a double master's in nursing. What kind of health is this? You're gonna get a COVID from walking down the street? This is insane. Look at this. Two people who are together walking with a mask, and they're fine. Thank God this woman has some sanity, no mask on her, and they're fine with what's going on here. Spray painting arrows on the sidewalk in Swampscott, which means that if you are walking in the wrong direction, if you walk... I'm telling you, that's what's going to happen. Take a look. Go to the Swampscott website and find out what happens if you don't walk. It's not these guys' faults. They're just doing their job. But look at this. Look, this is Swampscott. This is where the governor of Massachusetts lives. This is what's going on. This is insanity. This is what's going on. Look at this. This is tyranny. This is communism. This is what the Chinese communist government does to their people, and it's happening right here on the streets in Massachusetts.
Remember the frog in the boiling pot? Slowly but surely, people adapted to the new regime, and because not enough people stood up and called it out at the time, and because some people just said they were just doing their job, it became the new norm. This video is from the South China Morning Post. These children are wearing 1-meter hats to practice social distancing from others. Listen to the light-hearted music. That makes it all the more insidious in my view. By the way, this next article is from the Mirror. Cafe customers must wear pool noodle hats to make sure they socially distance. A German cafe and Konditorei Roth, asked customers to wear hats with pool noodles taped to them to ensure they stick to social distancing measures. But it has divided opinions. Absolute clown world. And this is what it looks like. So this is designed to maintain the 2-meter distancing rule, which, as I've covered in my previous videos, in the long term will actually make people sicker because they're not interacting with other people in a normal way that we evolved to basically transmit necessary good bacteria and viruses to help strengthen our immune systems collectively. This next article is from the Belfast Telegraph. Coronavirus. Pubs in Ireland propose radical changes to secure earlier opening. No live music or DJs. No standing and no dancing. This is the future of Irish pubs. Oh my God, I can't believe what I'm reading. The Irish pub is like one of the greatest social venues that you could go to in the world for the crack, for fun, and this is what we're doing now in a socially distanced world. Oh God, it's so dystopian. The pub experience will be dramatically different according to the new norm, right? The new norm. This is where we have to go now, because apparently the virus that actually is no more fatal than a seasonal influenza, this is what we have to do. The pub experience will be dramatically different according to a new set of social distancing strict guidelines, which may allow for pubs in the Republic to reopen sooner. Industry representatives will urge Dublin officials to allow bars to reopen at the same time as restaurants and cafes, with a series of strict social distancing guidelines in place. Sounds like a pub experience with no fun. Yay! According to the Irish government's roadmap to reopening the country, pubs are to reopen in Phase 5, which would be August 10th at earliest. However, cafes and restaurants will reopen under Phase 3 from June 29th. I wonder how many can actually hang on that long. It's a long time for businesses to try to survive. Pub representatives, Licensed Vintners Association and the Vintners Federation of Ireland have now joined forces to urge the Irish government to put forward pub reopening dates if publicans follow strict measures. The measures are: dispense only bars with no sitting, standing, ordering, payment or drinking at the bar itself. Customers will be seated at tables at all times, with table service provided. No more than 4 people for every 10 square meters. A maximum of 6 people allowed at one table. This is absolute madness. Does anyone else feel like we're living in a mouse laboratory experiment? I think this will utterly destroy the fabric of Dublin's pub scene and the atmosphere that people have always enjoyed when they come to Dublin and go to our pubs. And it will take the joy out of everything, out of communities, social groups, public venues. It'll destroy nightlife. No one will enjoy these kinds of conditions. And I think that's the point. I also think they might be difficult to enforce, given that people will have alcohol on them. Yeah, they're really going to be able to continue to socially distance when they're drunk. We're being asked to live and act in a completely unnatural way. Social distancing is antisocial. It's a sinister attempt to ruin relations between people and divide humanity, wreck cohesion, and further insulate people. Hand sanitizer used before entry, with staff washing hands every half an hour, so they'll kill more bacteria that they need. Outdoor spaces must enhance social distancing, so more onerous rules on human interactions outside. Okay. No live music or DJ, and the safe use of toilets, which may include limits on the number of customers using them at one time. Imagine the queue. Imagine queuing to get into a pub, and then queuing in the pub to get to the toilet all the time, like for no reason other than that there's actually lots of space in the bathroom. It's not even full. It's just they've made it in such a way that you can't get a normal amount of people in there. I cannot find the words. There's nothing that I can say that can really do this justice. It's appalling how we're being treated, and most people are complying out of fear, and fear is ruling the herd mindset. By the way, here's a video from Reuters shared on Twitter. ICYMI. See how lives are changing as countries start to ease restrictions. And look at this, a restaurant with a waitress wearing a mask and a face shield. Is she a waitress or a welder? She's serving the table, and this other female customer is sitting there with what looks like a rather depressed expression on her face. Can you blame her? So everyone, I guess, is going to be separated in this restaurant by plastic screens. There goes the enjoyment of a nice, relaxed dining experience. Hand sanitizer getting on the bus because we're all hypochondriacs now, and apparently, I guess, no one has access to the internet to find out from alternative media sources doing actual journalism that this entire thing is basically a giant scam. Yes, the virus is real, but it's only as fatal as an actual bad seasonal influenza. Just look at these images. This is insane. Everyone is wearing masks, unaware that the masks will actually make them sicker, but whatever. Just go along with the new COVID Sharia. Obviously, restaurants won't be able to survive. They won't have the numbers of customers to turn a profit. So that will be the end of dining out as we know it. Unless people wake up and realize that this has to be stopped in its tracks. This article is from CNN. Restaurant and bar owners say social distancing could wipe out their industry, unsurprisingly. The US state of Georgia allowed restaurants to reopen on April 27th. The 3 owned by Ryan Pernice are still shuttered. The entrepreneur hasn't opened his restaurants. Table in Maine, Osteria Matone, and Coalition Food and Beverage. Since March 16th, Pernice is worried about the health of his employees and customers. But there's another reason the restaurants are still shut down. They can't make a profit with social distancing rules in place. It's almost like that's the point, isn't it? So basically, all small to medium businesses won't be able to operate. Only massive corporations will survive. And in the future, it'll be a choice. Do you want to work for the government in the public sector? Or do you want to work for a massive multinational? There'll be nothing in between. If you talk to restaurants across the globe, the language might change, but the math is the same. Pernice told CNN Business, restaurants and bars need volume and traffic to make them work. Pernice has been forced to lay off or furlough 80 of his 120 staff. Around the world, millions more restaurant and bar workers have lost their jobs as countries impose strict lockdowns designed to contain the pandemic. To contain the pandemic or shut down those businesses? Some of those restrictions are now being eased, but restaurants and bars are not being prioritized for reopening because they are viewed as venues where the virus might spread.
Restaurant owners and managers are grappling with the brutal math that underpins their industry. Margins are razor thin, forcing eateries and bars to pack in customers every night, and especially on the weekends, in order to stay afloat. In the toughest markets, that means multiple waves of guests and tables that are pushed together as closely as possible. It's a business model that is simply not compatible with social distancing. There will be no profits for us while we are social distancing, said Blaise Noah, another Georgia restaurateur who chose to reopen when restrictions were lifted last month. There are a great amount of restaurants that I've heard will never open again. Funny how mainstream media corporate offices everywhere, they're considered essential. They're not being shut down. It's interesting, isn't it? As unemployment rises to levels not previously seen in the last century, more and more people will fall into states of social welfare and eventual poverty, and people's health, mentally and physically, does not tend to do well in poverty. I've said this many times. The lockdown and social distancing will have a much greater impact on health than the virus ever did. The virus was always used as a Trojan horse for more control, to accelerate sustainable development goals, Agenda 21, Agenda 2030, and bring about mandatory vaccinations, more surveillance, and ultimately global communism. To bring about the fourth industrial revolution, first, the old world economy must be destroyed to make way for the new one. I found this video by Gulf State Analytics very interesting.
As the digital, physical and biological worlds continue fusing together against the backdrop of innovation in artificial intelligence, the world is experiencing the fourth industrial revolution.
I gotta say, it doesn't sound like a revolution I'm going to enjoy all that much.
Advanced wireless technologies, autonomous vehicles, 3D printing, commercial drones and fintech all serve to open new areas for creativity, innovation, efficiency and economic growth.
I really don't like these autonomous vehicles. I want the freedom to drive my own car.
In fact, some experts estimate that up to 80% of existing jobs will be automated by the fourth industrial revolution.
By the fourth industrial revolution.
She has an unusual way of finishing her sentences. Anyway,
this is the problem, isn't it? What exactly happens to all of those people who are made redundant by machines? You're going to have mass unemployment, so how do they feed themselves? You see, this fourth industrial revolution sounds more and more like technology-enabled communism. This utopian notion that we'll all just have infinite amounts of resources because the machines will make all our food and clothing for us and we'll just have all this leisure time. It's never worked in the past, and I suspect it won't work in the future. I don't think humanity wants to live like zoo animals in smart cities, being fed scraps by AI overlords.
The impact of this transition will reach all countries of the world, bringing opportunities as well as major challenges that could threaten to unleash political, social, and economic instability.
Yeah, so why are we doing it again? Why are we trying to make human beings essentially obsolete?
The coronavirus pandemic, however, is hotwiring the fourth industrial revolution. The COVID-19 crisis will highlight how countries, which began embracing next-generation technologies, are set to adapt more easily to ongoing changes, as this disease represents a major paradigm shift.
It's a major paradigm shift. And here I was thinking it was just a virus that we had to do lockdown for a few weeks, shelter in place, flatten the curve, socially distance for a bit, and then we just go back to normal, right? After the vaccine or something. But apparently, the whole world has to change for this virus. Human society is being catapulted into the fourth industrial revolution, and it's almost as if, well, a paranoid person might think that the virus has been some kind of excuse or a MacGuffin that is being used to usher in this new era for humanity.
As the pandemic rushes the world into the future of digitisation at a faster rate, the Gulf states are in a comparatively strong position to make this transition smoothly.
But why do we have to make this transition at all? I mean, why is it necessary? Why does the world have to be rushed into this new digitised future? Why can't the people decide to just go back to the way things were and live their lives the way they did before? You know, it's almost like certain vested interest groups wanted to change our societies and economies, and the virus is the means by which they begin to normalise an entirely new paradigm for humanity, to acclimatise us to the new normal and widespread changes to our social behaviour. It's just interesting, isn't it? Here's an interesting article from CNN, actually. Our cities may never look the same again after the pandemic. From Auckland to Bogota, urban planners are already adapting our cities to lockdown. But will the changes last? And which more radical design proposals, be it sewer monitors or epidemic skyscrapers, will shape the post-pandemic city? Yet more talk about how things aren't going back to normal. For advocates of walkable, unpolluted and vehicle-free cities, the past few weeks have offered an unprecedented opportunity to test the ideas they have long lobbied for. Well, isn't it just so convenient that a global virus came along in order to help facilitate this unprecedented opportunity, given the lockdown and everything, and give such people a taste of the kind of walkable, unpolluted and vehicle-free cities that they've long lobbied for. With COVID-19 lockdowns vastly reducing the use of roads and public transit systems, city authorities from Liverpool to Lima are taking advantage by closing streets to cars, opening others to bicycles, and widening sidewalks to help residents maintain the 6-foot distancing recommended by global health authorities. Czech firm Hua Architects has meanwhile proposed a gastro-safe zone, pictured top, which uses brightly coloured ground markings to encourage passers-by to keep their distance from al fresco diners. And in Milan, one of the cities worst hit by COVID-19, designer Antonio Lanzillo has envisaged public benches equipped with plexiglass shield dividers. Here's some examples. Unreal. So it looks like cities are going to become even more impersonal places. Less social trust, more fear and anxiety about a disease, by the way, which once again is no more deadly than the seasonal influenza. But let's just go ahead and change absolutely everything anyway. And look at this photograph. I mean, they're at a socially distant table, right? This guy's drinking coffee while wearing a mask, of course. That makes logical sense. Does anyone else think that the future is basically City 17 from Half-Life 2? Other ideas have ranged from self-disinfecting smart elevators to door handles that can be easily operated with elbows rather than hands. It is too soon to know which, if any, may be realized, but each idea suggests that practice of social distancing and unease over shared surfaces could continue long after the current crisis. And that has been my biggest worry in all of this. If they do, the widely publicised 6-foot distancing guidelines could redefine the layout and spacing of new public facilities, according to Northwestern University's Sarah Jensen Carr, whose forthcoming book, The Topography of Wellness, considers how urban landscapes have been transformed by epidemics like cholera, tuberculosis and obesity. So 6 foot could be the new unit we use when we think about cities and public parks.
The caption on this photo says it all. A desire to distance ourselves from others in public may continue long after the pandemic. This next clip is from Eyewitness News ABC 7 New York.
Now, another popular spot, Domino Park in Williamsburg, where they've taken the added measure of actually drawing circles 6 feet apart so that people who come to the park can stay within a safe zone. That being painted there on the artificial grass there in Domino Park.
Would you really want to live like this? I mean, this is like a parody, but it's real life. You're going out trying to be genuinely social and amongst other people while sitting within designated social distancing circles, what are effectively dehumanizing parking spaces for human beings. These spaces are not designed to be temporary. Think of the widespread and truly disturbing changes that the social engineers have brought about in just a few weeks that have fundamentally upended our society and potentially permanently modified foundational aspects of human behavior. We're a tactile, physical and social animal that evolved to herd together in groups, thus creating social bonds of trust while also spreading healthy bacteria, germs and shared viruses that help to promote a healthy immune system. All of this is now gone, or potentially illegal it seems. And to make matters worse, I'm beginning to suspect that what we're seeing is a cultural change, and that's a different thing because now, I could be wrong about this, but I'm getting increasingly concerned that the longer this goes on, the more it becomes a cultural norm, which is to say, the wearing of masks, gloves, obsessive hand washing, social distancing, etc., that they've become arbitrary behaviors and rituals that are simply how people behave now, in the same way that, for example, Islamic countries have social norms as well as modesty clothing rules for women. In other words, on a certain level, the conversation about social distancing from a scientific perspective is over. It doesn't matter that scientists come out and explain to people that social distancing or wearing masks does more harm than good, because the culture has changed to adopt these new behaviors and rituals, not because of the pseudo-science that introduced them, but because of the power of the propaganda behind them. Here's another video from Reuters. The title is German Schools Reopen to New Normal. New normal, right? Now, why is it that the media, experts and politicians keep repeating that phrase, new normal, over and over again? It's almost like they're trying to tell the public that all of these changes, as a result of the virus and social distancing, are here to stay permanently. Like this whole virus was an excuse to see how much fear was required to make the populace come to heel and radically alter their behavior, and also to further the plans of the elites for a new social paradigm. So again, with the happy, quirky, upbeat, rom-com type music. People queuing up outside. Well, you better get used to that, folks. Queuing is now going to be part of our lives in places where it was never previously required. People used to be able to just walk straight into shops, restaurants, bars, schools, all kinds of public buildings. Not anymore. Now your life is filled with needless complexity, obstacles, control measures, and systems that isolate you and separate you from other people, while also keeping you fearful and distrustful of strangers and human contact. What a great new world. So much joy and love, right? It's not at all massively depressing and demoralizing or anything. What's with the music? Is this supposed to be fun or something? So the classes have to be all changed, and everyone is now sitting a good distance apart from each other. Separated by tape. But it's like the kind of tape you'd see during a roadside construction or maintenance or something. First of all, we reduced the number of students in one group. Yeah, this is going to be really efficient and economically viable, isn't it? Well, all of that standing outside, I sure hope it never rains ever. So, what do you think is going to happen here? Well, I'll tell you what I think. We keep hearing about how remote learning is going to be a big thing in the future, so it's likely that this situation is just going to be so crap that eventually online classes will become the new norm. I want to say that Bill Gates and the plans of vaccine companies to introduce their mandatory vaccines, for their reasons, that's only one small part of the story. It might be easy to overfocus on just the fight against mandatory vaccines, while also neglecting the tyranny of social distancing, widespread population surveillance, the introduction of a social credit system, draconian lockdowns, a cashless society, contact tracing, and more. Ultimately, the COVID-19 crisis and the societal control measures and infringements upon individual civil liberties and freedoms sit within the greater plans of the Sustainable Development Goals, Agenda 21, Agenda 2030. Also, I'm seeing more stories like this. This is from New Zealand, from the New Zealand Herald. COVID-19 coronavirus. Controversial bill passed to enforce Alert Level 2 powers. A bill giving police sweeping powers to potentially enter homes without warrants while enforcing COVID-19 alert level rules has passed. The COVID-19 Public Health Response Bill was rushed through Parliament in time for Alert Level 2, but came under intense scrutiny from the opposition. It passed 63 votes in favour with 57 against. The National Party and ACT didn't support the bill, saying it was an overreach of powers, distrusted New Zealanders, and didn't allow for orders to have proper scrutiny. So, personal property and privacy rights now seem to mean very little in the midst of this crisis. Here's an article from itv.com in the UK. Take a look. First images released of social distancing markings to be used in Birmingham. Images have been released showing what one of the first pavement markings and signage schemes is to be used in the country could look like. The markings are designed to guide the public on how to follow social distancing and are to be launched on Broad Street in Birmingham. Two-way markings stretching 100 metres are to be laid from the junctions of Gas Street and all along Broad Street to Berkeley Street. Social distancing is just complete control of all human behaviour in public. So to wrap up this long-winded video, it's weird. In order to bring about the kind of world that the oligarchs clearly want of top-down control, well, they would need a lot more control of the populace, and wouldn't you know it, COVID-19 happened right at the start of this new decade, and it seems to be the perfect opportunity to bring about all these social changes that are useful in accelerating plans for this new world that no one in the public wanted or voted for. Ultimately, the future is not written. Well, okay, technically, the people behind these ghastly New World Order plans have written the future from their perspective in documents and manifestos and propaganda briefings, but in truth, they can't actually make it happen without our consent. And every small act of defiance, every time you don't stand on the stupid circle in the grocery store, or you walk back the other way that you're not supposed to down the aisle, or you refuse to wear a mask, every hug that you have in public, every handshake, every time people attend their places of worship when they're told that they're not supposed to, every time they gather on the streets in groups, it all shows that they do not own us and they cannot control us. Just trying to live a normal and authentic life and going about our day unencumbered is now running the risk of arrest or some kind of criminal prosecution. But I have faith in the genuine scientists, truth-tellers, and the increasing number of legal professionals now looking into this and opening public inquiries as to what is actually going on here. The problem for the global oligarchs and nutbar psychopath control freaks seeking to bring about the New World Order is that they can only do so by constructing a house of cards. Their plans are so elaborate and interconnected that ripping away one thread, one piece of the puzzle, will dismantle the entire thing. We still have an opportunity to reach hearts and minds, and so long as there is hope, we must continue to dust ourselves off every day, get back up on the horse, and try to continue to fight for the truth with everything we have until the very end. So long as we can still do that, then they haven't defeated us. Thank you very much for watching this extremely long video. Anyway, as this is an exclusive BitChute video, please share this far and wide to reach as many people as possible. And by the way, another video of mine was removed on YouTube. My video commenting on the removal of the Dolores Cahill interview was also removed. Unbelievable, that's 2 videos removed in the space of a week. But that's YouTube. Thank God for BitChute. We'll continue to fight the good fight for free speech on this platform. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.
So, as you know, my video interview with Professor Dolores Cowell was removed by YouTube. It had almost 500,000 views in a week. YouTube has removed many videos from doctors and scientists that have gone against the prevailing mainstream narrative on the topic of the COVID-19 crisis. Examples include Dr. Erickson's press conference, Professor Knut Witkowski's first video as part of the Perspectives on Pandemic series on Journeyman Pictures YouTube channel, also Professor Dolores Cowell's interview on Highwire with Del Bigtree, and the Plandemic Part 1 documentary interview with Professor Judy Mikovits. Suffice to say that censorship has never been an environment in which science has flourished. In order to reach a greater understanding of the topic and to determine what the truth is, the marketplace of ideas requires a wide range of perspectives to be considered, and all data must be taken into account. To omit certain ideas and information just because someone doesn't like it, or it runs counter to a person's own political views or the political perspective of a particular institution, would be detrimental to the quality of the science. Well, it turns out there's a little bit more to the story about the removal of my interview with Professor Cowell. I received the following email from a man named Martin Coulter. He's the tech reporter for BusinessInsider.com. He emailed this in the morning of the removal of the video. He said, "Hey Dave, hope you're keeping safe and well under lockdown. I saw your video with Dolores Cowell was removed from Facebook and YouTube. I'll be covering this for Business Insider. Do you have any comment to offer with regards to the tech firm's actions? Please let me know when you can, and I'll be sure to include in our article. Thank you, Martin." Well, I've never been contacted by anyone in such a prestigious publication before about the removal of one of my videos. So just imagine my shock when I visited Martin Coulter's Twitter account shortly thereafter to find the following thread that he wrote. Exclusive. Facebook and YouTube have taken down a video filled with COVID-19 conspiracy theories after it racked up close to 1 million views in a week. Huh. So I can see this gentleman doesn't agree with the position that myself and Professor Cowell hold on COVID-19. Anyway, just to clarify something, the video had racked up 478,840 views on YouTube before it was removed. I uploaded a different version of the video on Facebook. It was a shorter version, and it was heavily modified, and it didn't reach very many views at all on Facebook because my platform isn't that big on that website. So it was nowhere near 1 million views. I don't know where you got that from. Martin's thread continues. In the video, Professor Dolores Cowell makes a series of unverified/dangerous claims about COVID-19. But while peddling bogus cures and conspiracies about Bill Gates, she fails to mention her own role as chair of the hard right Irish Freedom Party. There's just so much wrong here, it's incredible. Firstly, the Irish Freedom Party is not hard right. They're conservative and centrist. You obviously just don't like their politics and wish to smear them, I suppose. But seriously, what are you talking about? Dolores mentions that she's chair of the Irish Freedom Party at 1 hour, 3 minutes and 26 seconds into the video.
Well, I mean, obviously I'm very honoured to be chair of the Irish Freedom Party as well, you know, so, but
So, she said that she was chair of the Irish Freedom Party. Also, her politics have nothing to do with her science background or what she said in my interview. So go watch the video on BitChute. So that's 2 mistakes you've made so far, Martin. Such fake news. Cahill claims lockdown is unnecessary, touts the miracle drug hydroxychloroquine as an effective treatment for COVID-19, and claims recovered patients will have immunity for life. There is little to no evidence for any of these claims. Is she not entitled to her own expert opinion on this? She is, after all, far more qualified to talk about this subject than yourself, Martin. But her opinions aren't in line with the World Health Organization's guidance, so I guess they can be dismissed? This isn't how journalism is done, Martin. Journalists investigate various leads. They investigate the truth by questioning and not just believing what institutions tell them at face value. If you think Professor Cahill is wrong, why not interview her? Well, I think you probably believe that by doing so, it would just give her dangerous claims and bogus cures a platform, and you couldn't have that, right? By the way, are you going to call out the Daily Mail article published on the 11th? Triple drug combo of anti-malaria pill, hydroxychloroquine, azithromycin, and zinc improved coronavirus patients' chances of being discharged and cut death risk by almost 50%, study finds. Researchers at NYU Grossman School of Medicine looked at 932 coronavirus patients hospitalized between March 2nd and April 5th. Half were given a combination of hydroxychloroquine, azithromycin, and zinc sulfate, and the other half did not receive zinc. Patients receiving the triple drug combination were 1.5 times more likely to recover enough to be discharged and 44% less likely to die. The team believes hydroxychloroquine helps zinc, which has antiviral properties, get into infected cells. Also, this website, covexit.com, the esteemed professor Paolo Zanotto from the University of Sao Paulo has released a list of 50 scientific references supporting the use of hydroxychloroquine for COVID-19. But anyway, Martin continues. Facebook and YouTube both removed the video after we flagged it. But creator Dave Cullen, the hard right vlogger, whatever that means, better known as Computing Forever, has called on fans to download and re-upload the video wherever they can. What is happening? What is happening, dear viewer? Let me read that again. Facebook and YouTube both removed the video after we flagged it. So, after you've picked up your jaw from the floor, let me run down what happened here. I received an email from Martin Coulter of Business Insider that read, "Hey Dave, hope you're keeping safe and well under lockdown." Really? Do you really hope that I'm keeping safe and well under lockdown, Martin? Way to be all two-faced and nicey-nicey to me privately, and then publicly you admit that you flagged my video. I saw your video with Dolores Cahill was removed from Facebook and YouTube. I'll be covering this for Business Insider. Do you have any comment to offer with regards to the tech firm's actions? Please let me know when you can, and I'll be sure to include in our article. In your hit piece, you mean? In your hit piece against me and Dolores Cahill? Thank you, Martin, it said. I'm sorry, this is just absolutely unbelievable. Your tweet says, after we flagged it, suggesting you and or Business Insider flagged the video. Yeah, it was removed after it was flagged by you guys. So, are you asking me if I have a comment to offer with regards to the tech firm's actions? Do you want me to give you a comment about how I feel about the fact that you guys actually are the ones who flagged my video? So you basically generated an article about the censoring of my video, which reads, Facebook and YouTube took 7 days to 7 days, unbelievable, to remove an hour-long video filled with COVID-19 conspiracies. Okay, you haven't bothered to address our claims or to see if what we're saying is true or not. You just fob them off as conspiracies, of course. And then when you click on this article, it immediately brings up a paywall. So, you flagged my video, contacted me looking for a comment on the video's removal. You didn't tell me in your email that you guys were the ones who flagged it, or that you were going to call me hard right, etc. You then proceeded to smear myself and Dolores on Twitter as hard right. You claim that the video contains conspiracies. You erroneously claimed that Dolores never mentioned that she was chair of the Irish Freedom Party, which she did. She said that in the video. You erroneously claimed that the video had 1 million views. It didn't. You then admitted that you guys flagged the video, and then you proceed to place this article of yours behind a paywall, essentially monetizing the censorship of my content. This is absolutely astounding. Totally shameless. I want to stop at this point and say to my audience, please do not give this guy what I believe he wants. Do not contact him. Do not say anything to him on Twitter. Don't say anything negative, because that's what these kinds of activists, and this is not journalism, this is what activists want you to do. They want to claim that they're the target, the victim of hate or abuse or some nonsense on Twitter, right? They want to play the victim. Don't give them that. Do not contact this guy, please. You're not helping me if you do. Okay, now I would like to hear from Business Insider. I would like to politely ask them if this behavior is something that they stand by. Did they think that the flagging of this content was justified? I haven't always agreed with Business Insider, but I've always respected them as a publication. By the way, I'm not hard right, whatever that nonsense means. I'd appreciate if you removed that. Okay, so again, did the company sanction these actions? Or was this simply the actions of this individual, Martin Coulter? I don't know. Now, I would imagine that the justification that he might give, because I've seen this kind of nonsense before done to other people, so he's probably going to think to himself, yeah, I flagged it, big deal. So what? I'm not the one who removed it. YouTube and Facebook removed it. Okay? Admittedly, after he flagged it. So he'll push the blame for the removal of the video on YouTube and Facebook. Because he knows that those organizations have a particular stance on COVID-19 content that likely agrees with his own stance. And then he'll make the private company argument, no doubt. And I would say, well, that's despite the fact that, number one, these companies have in the past received public funding. Number two, they've become de facto monopolies and therefore the public square. They're a public commons of sorts. And they receive Section 230 immunity by claiming to be a platform and not a publisher, despite behaving like publishers when it suits them. But all those arguments aside, this comes down to someone who knew what they were doing. Martin, I would never dream of censoring you or what you stand for. I've done nothing to you. I have no doubt that worse censorship is to come for me in the future, but I will battle on whatever platform will have me, even if I'm speaking to an audience of one. What makes me sad is not what's happened to me or what's going to happen to me in the future. I'm not going to play the victim card here, but I do weep for journalism. I'm flabbergasted at this kind of behavior and the kind of mindset it takes to knowingly flag a video down, to get it removed, and then write an email like he did to me, pretending to be doing journalism, pretending to be nice to me, while behind my back, producing a hit piece, then labeling me hard right, and then the video gets taken down. I weep for the truth. I'm disappointed for Dolores not being able to get her message out, and I'm disappointed for the public not being able to hear her. Okay, so by removing this video, it's taken away the opportunity for millions of people to hear a different set of ideas. They can't hear a different perspective on YouTube because this person thinks that it's the wrong one, or that it's dangerous or conspiratorial or whatever. The public are unable to determine what the truth is or what is conspiratorial if the range of ideas they're exposed to is so utterly limited in this way. What gives anyone the right, or any organization the right, to see themselves as the ultimate arbiters of truth? We can only learn what the truth is by exploring all ideas. We can only know if we're actually being lied to by being able to speak freely and to be able to hear alternative explanations. All voices have to be permitted, including ones that we may disagree with or not even like. This is what journalism used to be. The video was removed on YouTube, but it is available on BitChute, so please share it. My intention with my work, Martin, is to explore ideas, to call out lies, and to learn what the truth is, and to help raise the public's consciousness. That includes your own, believe it or not. So I actually wish you all the best, and I hope and pray that you one day change your mind about all of this. And again, please don't contact him. Just leave him alone, and that's the best thing to do, is just set up a BitChute account and subscribe to me over there. Just disappointing. Thanks very much for watching.
So, after 1 week online and over 450,000 views, a video that definitely can be considered a viral hit, debunking the narrative with Professor Dolores Cahill, has now been removed on my channel because apparently it violates the TOS. You're not allowed to disagree with the World Health Organization. YouTube CEO Susan Wojcicki made this clear the other week. It says basically that upon review, we've determined that it violates our guidelines and we've removed it from YouTube. It's very vague. YouTube doesn't allow content that encourages or promotes violent or dangerous acts, which I didn't do, that have an inherent risk of serious physical harm or death. I don't know what the hell they're talking about. It's just because we are obviously challenging the narrative and they cannot deal with the truth. They've removed other content creators, they've demonetized channels, and they've removed a lot of other videos, including Perspectives on Pandemic with Professor Knut Wachowski, and also the video, the documentary Plandemic featuring Judy Mikovits. So yeah, this video with Dolores Cahill has now been taken down, which is obviously very upsetting, but nevertheless it is available over on BitChute. The revolution, fight for truth, it will not be televised on YouTube, it seems. The future is going to be BitChute all the way, and I would encourage you, now that this has happened, more of my videos will likely be taken down, so I would encourage you to follow me over on BitChute, because I gotta be honest with you, I'm never giving up, and I'm with you to the very end in the fight for truth on this subject, because this is everything. You know, it was on the radio this morning that apparently we can expect the COVID-19, which is again no more dangerous than a seasonal influenza, to carry on and be with us and to be an ever-present threat for years to come, apparently. And the reason is because they always give the game away when they say that you have to get used to the new norm, all the social distancing rules, and the way that it's radically changed our society, the workplace, how we interact with each other, and of course the massive changes it's going to bring about in our economy, destroying the old economy, making way for an entirely new one, and what looks like a China-style social credit dystopia that looks like it's the way we're going to be going. Well, when you censor this kind of information, you're clearly against science, because we need to be able to have a broad spectrum of ideas represented in order to finally find the truth. But of course, when you do this, you will simply create a Streisand effect. This video is very important now. The link to the BitChute version of Debunking the Narrative with Professor Dolores Cahill is linked below. You're not going to stop this woman, you're not going to stop me, and just because my videos or my entire channel will be taken down on YouTube doesn't mean I'm going to stop. You will eventually be leaving people with nothing left to lose, and that means we might as well just keep on going till the very end. I will keep doing this job until they literally are going to have to kill me in order to stop me. That's what it's going to take. That's what it's actually going to take for you to stop me. I believe in bigger things than these people who want to destroy us. I believe in truth, I believe in Logos, I believe in freedom, I believe in God, and I will not stop for anyone or anything until we get to the bottom of this, until we've woken up the populace to what is actually truly going on. Thank you very much for watching. Be sure to watch Debunking the Narrative on BitChute, share it wherever you can, download it, re-upload it everywhere you can, and let's help to get the message out. God bless, and I'll see you soon.
If you could go back in time to, say, September 2000 and tell someone about the attacks that would take place in New York and Washington the following year in 2001, and then you proceeded to explain the widespread changes to airport security that would follow, I think they might have a hard time believing it. They might say, so you're saying that you can't bring a 150ml bottle of a liquid in your carry-on bag, but you can bring 3 50ml bottles of the same liquid. Do you have any idea how stupid that sounds? Security can rifle through people's bags? Travelers will be asked to remove their shoes in case they might have a bomb in them. Dude, you sound like a paranoid conspiracy theorist. They're going to treat 95-year-old granny in a wheelchair with just as much suspicion? Listen to yourself, you're a lunatic. No one would take that seriously. There's going to be body scanners where people are invasively x-rayed, and security will be able to see through a person's clothes down to their underwear. You're delusional. No one would ever consent to that. If they tried to implement something like that, there would be public uproar. It would never happen. And yet, as we know, not only are these kinds of security measures taking place every day in American airports, this kind of stuff has been happening all over the world in every airport, including in places that have never had a terrorist attack or would never be a major target for a terrorist attack.
I remember the first time I went through airport security after 9/11, how demoralizing it was, and it still is, but above all, I was taken aback at how compliant everybody was, how the public just went along with it. I knew in my gut that this was wrong. They should not be allowed to treat us this way, but the problem was not how I felt. The problem was the herd mentality of the general public. People just went along with it. 9/11 was so traumatic and so terrifying to people that they were basically overwhelmed with fear and were happy to sacrifice freedom for more security. Now, I want to say, I have no problem with the idea of sky marshals on planes, for example. That's like having a security guard or a bouncer to a building. It makes sense to me. But a sky marshal is a very different thing to invasive airport security measures that emerged from the TSA. If you asked most members of the public if they would be willing to go back to pre-9/11 airport security standards, I think a lot of people would be very apprehensive about doing so and would adopt the attitude of, well, it's better to be safe than sorry, maybe we'll just leave it the way it is, you never know. Please understand, this is exactly how I believe people now feel about the truly Orwellian social distancing policy that's emerged in just the last few weeks. It's been astonishing at how quickly people have adopted it. Now, as someone has said on my Computing Forever Facebook page, social distancing is really more like physical distancing, the separation of people from each other, which, as I will discuss, is actually not only unnecessary, but dangerous and very damaging to human health, mentally and physically, as Dr. Erickson explains.
The immune system is built by exposure to antigens, viruses, bacteria. When you're a little child crawling on the ground, putting stuff in your mouth, viruses and bacteria come in, you form an antigen-antibody complex, you form IgG, IgM. This is how your immune system is built. You don't take a small child, put them in bubble wrap in a room and say, go have a healthy immune system. This is immunology, microbiology 101. When you take human beings and you say, go into your house, clean all your counters, Lysol them down, you're going to kill 99% of viruses and bacteria, wear a mask, don't go outside. What does that do to our immune system? Our immune system is used to touching. We share bacteria, staphylococcal, streptococcal bacteria, viruses. We develop an immune response daily to this stuff. When you take that away from me, my immune system drops. As I shelter in place, my immune system drops. You keep me there for months, it drops more. And now I'm at home, hand washing vigorously, washing the counters, worried about things that are indeed what I need to survive. If you have a normal functioning immune system, you need interaction. When a child is in a womb, you're in this protected environment. When you come out, you have almost no immune system. You develop that through touching your mouth, touching your eyes, virus, bacteria, immune response, IgG, IgM. This is how you build a strong immune system.
Do you think people are worrying too much?
Of course they are, but that's from media telling them to. I am telling them sheltering in place decreases your immune system. And then as we all come out of shelter in place with a lower immune system and start trading viruses and bacteria, what do you think is going to happen? Disease is going to spike. And then you've got disease spike amongst a hospital system with furloughed doctors and nurses. This is not the combination we want to set up for a healthy society.
And as Professor Dolores Cahill explains,
So there is really no need for this kind of hype. And I would, in a way, challenge the media and challenge the Irish government that it's almost neglecting the population, that people are dying unnecessarily because it was well known this SARS virus has been around for 17 years. Hydroxychloroquine is known as a treatment for decades, as well as it was used in China and all over the world before it came to Ireland. There is absolutely no need for the lockdown. And if we should be reopening the country within a week, and in that week, first of all, young people under, we'll say 50 or people under 50 should just be mingling now, ready to go back to work in a week.
well,
and people
when
should
you say mingling, do you mean no social distancing, just back to normal, none of this?
Yeah, there's absolutely no need. I would challenge anyone to say there is no need for social distancing. There are only 3 organisms that are transmitted in that way, and it's TB and smallpox and Ebola. So this one is not. This one is transmitted if a droplet is on a door handle, but absolutely. And the other thing is that masks, if people actually have the symptoms, they should wear a mask. But if you're like me, you had it, there is no need to wear a mask. But what a mask does, it's entirely the wrong thing. It actually reduces the oxygen supply to you. So it actually, everybody has latent viruses within their body. And because you're under oxygen stress, it allows viruses that were latent. Because you're under stress, it decreases your immune system. So there is no need for wearing masks, only if you have symptoms. And if you have symptoms, you should just stay at home for the week, and then you will be immune. There is absolutely no basis for social distancing. And I'd just like to say there's a lot of thing about this second spike, right? So the more people that are immune, so if young people under 50 or under 60 who are healthy go out and just mingle, right? Even if they don't go to school, but they just mix socially and, and meet their friends. There is no case in the world, except for people who are chronically ill with underlying lung diseases, that a young person has died. And also young people do not give it to adults. Adults give it to young people. But how you stop a virus is that you get a percentage of the population to become immune. And then there's like enough people that the virus circulation stops. So that within 10 days, if the students go out, tomorrow, literally whatever day we have, the 12th of May, and mingle, and I would challenge the government, I would take responsibility for this decision, right? They have to take a leadership role and come out. And people under 50 will say for this week, the schools or just social interactions for kids can go back from next week. And people who are over 80 or elderly should be taking their vitamins. GPs could stock up on hydroxychloroquine, and then over the next 3 or 4 weeks, the people that have underlying conditions can mingle. Ireland should be saying we're open for business from the 1st of June. We should open our hotels and our restaurants. There is absolutely no requirement for social distancing. And if you boost your immune system, there will be no second spike. And also the number of cases, I think, as I mentioned earlier, Dave, is actually people who are immune for life.
On that last point, Professor Cahill, who has also been interviewed on Gran Torino's channel, she's clarified several points from her interview with me, including the point about how immunity from COVID-19 works for life. Here's an excerpt.
And then just to come on to the question about immune for life, which people don't seem to understand anymore, which 20 or 30 years ago when we were in university and in secondary school, people were very aware of the immune system. So I might just give an example of chickenpox. To give people an example that chickenpox is a virus and that people